30 seconds. 15. 10.
Be brilliant.
9, 8,
No pressure.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
The 2018 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, brought to you from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. This is the race for Labor Commissioner.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dale Russell, Senior Investigative Reporter for Fox 5 News. You're watching the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, originating from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting right here in Atlanta. Now, this is the debate among candidates for Labor Commissioner. And let's meet those candidates now. They're in alphabetical order. We start with Mark Butler, a Republican and the current Commissioner of Labor for Georgia. His opponent, Richard Keatley, is a Democrat. He's a veteran and an educator. And now, let's meet our panelists. Maya Prabhu is a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Michelle Wright is news anchor for WSB Radio. Now let's get started. For the rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org. Now to start the debate, each candidate will be asked one question. Michelle Wright will get the first question for Mark Butler.
Mr. Butler, I have had, we'll say, the experience to head to the Department of Labor office, especially the unemployment office. And so my question for you is, as Labor Commissioner, are there ways that you can see you can improve the experience for those Georgians who find themselves between jobs from time to time?
Oh, there's no doubt. One of the things that we've been able to do in the last several years is add a lot more online tools. Our employgeorgia.com website actually not only has job listings for the Georgia Department of Labor, but it also pulls them from all the other reputable job boards. We also can provide a lot of other services. Like one of the things that we're bringing out right now, our Georgia Best program, which has been nationally recognized, that helps people with soft skills issues. We've actually currently just now rolling out a new version of it that's going to be helping our individuals going through our career centers. Not only can they get some help with their soft skills while they're there, but also they can go home and there'll be some online features that they can use to help brush up on their soft skills, because that's usually one of the number one reasons that an individual either loses their job or is not able to get a job.
Thank you. Now, Maya Prabhu, a question for Richard Keatley.
Mr. Keatley, you said that you don't believe Commissioner Butler has been the voice of the workers. What specifically has he done during his tenure to make you say that?
Yes, the one specific thing that my opponent has done was a Savannah bus driver incident, which was a couple of years ago. When he came into office, the bus drivers for a long time had been on 9-month contracts and had been going on to the unemployment insurance during the summer months, which is not the best situation. Rather than work with the school board and see why we're not providing living wages to people who are working full-time for the state, he chose to remove their unemployment insurance benefits and was found in violation of the law for that. So my approach would be to work with the communities, to work with the school boards, to take the point of view of workers and try and get them middle-class jobs that are going to allow them to provide for their families.
Now that concludes the first portion of our debate here. The candidates will now have a chance to question each other. Now each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question. There'll be 60 seconds to answer the question, and then another 30 seconds for rebuttal. Now by random selection, Mark Butler, you may ask the first question.
Mr. Keatley, you've recently in some of your speeches, you've developed a little joke using my last name. Would you like to share that with the people of Georgia?
Not necessarily. I said, well, I'll share it. I said Butler is a servant of the wealthy, and that I, as Commissioner of Labor, will be the servant of the workers of Georgia. I believe that this is the one constitutional office where we're charged to work for the workers of Georgia. Businesses have plenty of representation in the government, and as do other interest groups. But the workers are represented by the Commissioner of Labor. So I want to work to improve the services to our people. I want to make sure our veterans are taken care of when they come back from serving their country. And I want to work with the educational systems that I know so well to make sure that we can develop paths towards middle-class jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. A rebuttal?
Well, yes, I'm actually very proud of my last name as far as being a servant. Yes, I am. I'm a servant in the House of Georgia. I serve all people equally. I'm not unlike my opponent here who has said that he's going to be advocating for one side. We have a Department of Labor that looks at both sides equally and brings fairness to the system. And we know we've done a good job of that because of the records that we have set over the last several years when it comes to jobs and employment. Now, Mr.
Keatley, you have a turn to ask a question of your opponent.
Yes, I would ask Mr. Butler, do you know what the current wage difference is between men and women? And what have you done to address that in the 8 years you've been serving?
Well, first of all, we do a lot of recruiting. We don't discriminate between men and women. I can only speak really quite frankly to my own staff, which is about 85% female, and they do make more than their male counterparts. So by setting a good example on that, which I believe I have, we bring that out to the public. Now, I understand, stats are what they are and people can make of them, but we encourage all people to be served equally and paid equally. And I have been a good example of that in my tenure as Labor Commissioner.
Mr. Keatley, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, well, setting the example is not trickling down to the general population. The answer is 81 cents on the dollar. That makes about $8,746 less a year that a woman makes for a man in a similar job. And when I am Commissioner of Labor, I will open a new office of employee rights that will investigate discrimination and find the employers that are discriminating against their employees.
Thank you very much, and that concludes our second round. Now, for those of you who are just now joining us, this is the debate between candidates for Georgia's Commissioner of Labor. We will now go back to our esteemed panel to ask questions to the candidates of their choice until we run out of time. Now, just as a point of moderator privilege, if you will, I may also ask questions of the candidates, and I'll determine if there is a rebuttal that is appropriate in that particular situation. Maya, you get the first question in this round.
This question is for both of you. Georgia and Wyoming have the lowest state-set minimum wage rates in the nation at $5.15 an hour. Of course, the federal rate supersedes that, but there are about 90,000, in 2016, there were about 90,000 Georgians, or 4%, who were paid at or below the federal minimum wage. Does Georgia need to consider raising its state minimum wage to catch those workers who are in those exempted positions making less than federal minimum wage?
That's for both candidates?
For both candidates.
Absolutely. We have not raised the minimum wage in many, many years. I mention often that when I went to college in 1983, the year before I enrolled at Virginia Tech in the Naval ROTC, that I made $7.50 an hour in that job. And that was, 30 years ago or whatever it is. People are struggling in the state of Georgia. We have a lot of people stitching together part-time jobs to make ends meet, and they're not able to get by. So I believe strongly that we need to both invest in training, invest in workforce training so that people are qualified to get good jobs, and raise the minimum wage so that the base is not quite so low. A lot of people that are working in hotel and restaurant industries and all over. I mean, in red and blue Georgia, the first question I get out of people's mouths when I'm going through the checkout line is, when are you going to raise the minimum wage? When are politicians going to start thinking about us?
Mr. Butler, how do you see this?
Well, first of all, as Labor Commissioner, you cannot raise the minimum wage yourself. So we decided to take a practical approach to the problem. And what we've been doing is we started holding recruiting events at non-traditional hours to help people get out of the lower paying jobs into higher paying jobs, which we do have an abundance of right now. As a matter of fact, we started holding events on Saturdays after 5 o'clock, and we encourage individuals out of these lower paying jobs into better paying jobs, because that's a permanent solution. Because by raising the minimum wage, the only thing you've actually achieved policy-wise is raising them to yet again minimum wage, in which case they're going to be back in that same situation yet again. So the best way to do that is to help them, show them training, get them directed to training, and also make sure that they're being made aware of the better jobs that are out there right now in Georgia.
Michelle, your turn.
Following up on that a little bit, Mr. Butler, and then Mr. Keatley, I'd like to hear your response to this. With better paying jobs, unfortunately, the unemployment rate in Georgia, when you're unemployed, you get paid a flat $330 a week. I don't know how somebody making a six-figure salary who finds themselves unemployed mostly through layoffs can really sustain their way of living until they find another job, be it high paying or not. Is there any way to address that? And if so, what would that look like?
Oh, yes. I've already started talking to leadership about raising the maximum unemployment payment. But furthermore, the best way to do that is to get them off unemployment as quickly as possible, which right now in the state of Georgia, we've been able to do that. We actually had the fewest average weekly time period on unemployment than any other state and have held that for over 15 months. So by getting to the individuals, because we do rapid response, when there's a layoff, we're the first ones there. And not only can we help the individual with the dealing with the layoff, but we have another team right there that is showing them the jobs that are open, and we were able to place them in record time.
Mr. Keatley?
Yes, well, we have one of the lowest unemployment insurance formulas in the country. So that is one of the reasons that we have the low pay and the low period of time. We have 14 weeks. So in the wake of the financial crisis, for example, as my opponent was coming into office, and he and his colleagues lobbied to get or change the rules to get the unemployment insurance rate lowered from 20, that resulted in from 25 weeks to 14 weeks of time. 14 weeks to retrain for a new career, people were told, in the wake of the financial crisis when we most needed it. So we're not prepared for when the next crisis comes and we have a large series of layoffs, because people won't have the support system there to be able to get back into the system.
Mr. Butler, if I could, the 25 to 14 week change that Mr. Keatley is talking about, is that fair and accurate?
You know, it was 26 weeks originally. We changed that to 20 weeks, and we have it on a sliding scale, which a lot of states have gone to. What that means is...
But why drop it?
The lower your unemployment rate, the fewer weeks. So 14 weeks is basically 3.5 months. Right now, in this economy, you're looking at right now, I checked today, we have well over 100,000 job listings right now currently in Georgia that are available. So I think, you know, if you take a look at our track record and how people are going back to work faster than they ever have been, I think 3.5 months is quite sufficient right now.
Maya?
This question is for Mr. Butler. Your opponent has criticized a number of career centers that have closed across the state during the past 8 years. What is the benefit of consolidating career centers to Georgia's job seekers?
Well, first of all, you have to look at several different things. Our funding formula, most of our money comes from the federal government, 95%. Starting back in the Obama administration, when our claims started getting lower and lower and lower, we got less money. As a matter of fact, today we have $50 million fewer dollars today than we had 8 years ago. So we've had to lean on technology. We've had to consolidate some offices. We've had to reduce our workforce. But the good news is our technology is paying off. Right now, people who are filing claims, less than 3% are doing those in person because the online claim process is so much better. And why it's so much better is nobody's having to waste gas to go to a career center. They can do it from their homes. They can do it from their phones. And so we're trying to make a better customer experience. If you have career centers that are costing you $1 million a year to run, but you're only averaging about, you know, maybe 4 to 5 people a day in it, if that was a retail store, you would go out of business. So we've had to get more technology to help people without them having to travel and waste gas and waste money.
Michelle? No, go ahead, Maya.
So we know that rural broadband is an issue in the state. So for folks who aren't in cities who have access to the internet, how does that increase technology and availability of information on the website? How is that beneficial to them?
Well, they don't always have to go to our office. They can go to any type of computer. Also, we have mobile units for different areas where when they have, say, high unemployment or a large layoff, we bring the people to the site. We're very good at that. Matter of fact, you know, we have been recognized by the U.S. Department of Labor about our ability to be mobile and get to people where they are.
Michelle, next question.
Mr. Keatley, I'd like to ask you this question. There are a lot of talk of companies who are looking at Georgia, want to relocate to Georgia, which means an influx of people as well. With that, what would your plans be as Commissioner of Labor to help these companies relocate and make Georgia a place for them to want to stay?
Yeah, I do want companies to come to Georgia. We need to stay the #1 state for business, but we're right now ranked number 42 for economic opportunity in this state. We have one of the highest wage disparities in the nation, and that's because we haven't been doing a good enough job at training people to get those jobs. So often when we invite the companies down, and what I've heard out in all the rural areas of the state is that people are skeptical about what the benefit is to them. So we give a large tax cut to companies, we invite the company down, and then we hire people from Canada, from California, from Florida, rather than training Georgians. So we have a lot of high-paying jobs that are not filled right now, and we also have one of the highest poverty rates in the country. And so we need to train people to be ready for those jobs as part of the package of bringing the company in.
Michelle, was that for both or just Mr. Keatley?
Well, Mr. Butler, what would you say to that?
Well, first of all, my opponent here is dead wrong about the training. We have the best technical college system in the nation, bar none. Our Quick Start program has tried to be copied by other states, training for Georgians for the jobs that we're bringing in here. We have brought specialized programs to the Department of Labor that other states are trying to copy. Now, our customized recruitment, when companies come here, we're recruiting Georgians into these jobs, and we have gotten so good at recruiting Georgians for the jobs that are coming here. We've actually had some of the companies that we have recruited here in Georgia and to ask us to do recruitments in other states for them, which obviously we cannot do. But that's a testament to what the men and women of Georgia Department of Labor have been able to do to help grow the companies that we're bringing here to Georgia with Georgians.
If I could follow up on Michelle's question as quickly as you can. We don't know exactly what the incentive package is going to be yet. But that in mind, Amazon has been in the news. Mr. Keatley, do you want Amazon here?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Absolutely.
Even if it's a huge tax cut that's going to bring them here, tax incentives?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of companies looking at Georgia right now, a lot of big names I can't mention right now. Obviously, we'd love to have Amazon, but we'd love to have a lot of these others. The thing is, all the other states are going to be doing the same things, but you do have to be very careful and weigh the cost. Like we got into a fight with South Carolina not too long ago over an automobile plant. Quite frankly, they gave too much for it. They're never going to get the money back. But I'm going to trust the people at Economic Development to do the right thing because they've done a fantastic job over the last several years.
Maya, I believe it's your turn.
Mr. Keatley, you've said you want to transform the state's prisons into colleges. As Labor Commissioner, what steps would you need to take to see that happen?
Well, I greatly admire what Governor Deal has done at the end of his term in prison reform. We cannot have a system in which the state is sponsoring, giving an incentive essentially to keep people locked up. So I would like to introduce work programs and training programs into the prisons, and as well as courses, college courses, and other things like this. So it's a nice way to say that we need to make sure that when we're using workers in the prison system, that they should not be used, but it should be part of a training package that's going to make sure that when they get out of prison, they enter society with a job that's going to allow them to support themselves so that they don't end up in the same situation that got them in there in the first place.
Mr. Butler, I couldn't help but notice that you smiled during that question. You want to tell us why?
Well, I'm glad he agrees that we need to have training in our prisons because we already do. The things that he has advocated for, if you do a little research, he would know that our technical college system is already in a lot of our local prisons and state prisons. As a matter of fact, I have been recently helped make connection between his sheriff in his home county and the technical college system about putting some training programs in there. Matter of fact, out in West Georgia, they have already graduated the 3rd graduating class of welders. These are individuals that were in our prison systems. Our technical colleges are already there doing that job. Not only are they doing training for skill sets, but they're also making sure that these folks get a GED because a lot of them don't have a high school diploma, and they need to have that too. So this type of work that he's talking about, welcome to the game. It's already being done, and we're doing a great job at it.
Michelle?
Mr. Butler, I'd like to ask a little bit again about the process that folks are going through when they're looking to find jobs, when they're in between jobs. And what I find is there's a lot of times working parents have an issue because they don't have childcare to then be able to go to an interview or go to a career center or get training? And is there a way to address that? If so, what does that look like?
Well, one of the things I've advocated for and I would like to see changed is I want to borrow something from my friends out in Texas. What they did is the Childcare Vouchers, which you may be familiar with for working parents. In Texas, the Department of Labor actually is the ones that actually administer that program. I would like to see that shifted to us because we can use that to help individuals go back to work. And when they come in there and say, well, I have an issue. I'm not going to be able to take this job. I'm not going to be able to do this because I can't afford the child care. I'm going to go, well, guess what? Right here's the voucher. We can set you up with it and make sure that you can get there and be successful. But that's not the only thing. There's a lot of these programs like that that need to be changed and need to be updated because right now we have a cliff effect that keeps individuals from achieving. And that's something that Congress is going to have to address. Maybe let the states design our own programs instead of telling us how to do it.
Maya?
Mr. Butler, after serving 8 years in the State House, and now you've spent the past 8 as Labor Commissioner, and on your website you tout your accomplishments, including the lowest unemployment rate in decades. What else do you seek to accomplish in another term?
Well, the biggest thing that I want to see done is expanding our Georgia Best program. It is a soft skills training program. It is the #1 issue that we're seeing out in the workforce right now. We have polled this with employers across the state. It's right around 87% say we have a soft skills issue with our workforce. We have recently just redesigned that program, rolled it out with 1,100 lesson plans. We're in 200 high schools. We're in middle schools. We're in prison reentry programs with our Georgia Best program. This program teaches things like how to dress properly, how to work well with others. I mean, those basic skills that a lot of us, our parents taught us that are not out there. I want to see that program grow. Matter of fact, I would love to see the soft skills training be a part of the everyday curriculum K through 12 because you can have all the math, all the science you want to, but if you don't have great soft skills, you will not be successful.
We have time for one more question, and I'd like to take this opportunity to go down a little bit of a different path. Mr. Keatley, I'll start with you. You're both obviously accomplished, successful candidates for Labor Commissioner. What's the worst or hardest job you've ever had, and what did you learn from it?
The hardest job I ever had was working in a factory that 3-4 months before I went off to college. My father worked in a factory all of his life, and I worked in this soap factory where the conditions were not very good. Strangely enough, the company was called Malco, like bad company, and there was no safety in the company. It was not a union shop. There was not any respect of OSHA. They put me on a Mr. Plumber type thing where when the capper came down, things toxic things spewed out and burned people. It was a bad situation. So I believe that as Commissioner of Labor, we need to have someone who looks after workers. I'm not talking about being partial on only the side of workers over companies, but we need a fair playing field for our workers. And that's not happening right now in Georgia.
Mr. Butler, same question.
Well, probably the hardest job I ever had was one of my favorite jobs. My grandfather, he had a construction company. When I was quite young, I used to go out with him, and my job was, I was the cleanup crew. He liked a clean site, and I would help him and pick up the stuff during the summertime. And then when that kind of played out and when he decided to retire, then it was to the family farm. Matter of fact, I've got a lot of bumps and bruises and scars from that right there as we would work every single summer working on the farm, whether it was cutting down trees, setting up barbed wire, whatever. Matter of fact, I almost lost a finger off this hand right here working with him. And his idea of first aid then was go in the house, let your grandmother put a little bit of lemon on it, and get back out here. So it was a tough job. It learned me about work ethic, but it was one of my favorite memories.
Well, I'm glad you both survived and are here with us today. That is all the time we have for questions. Now each candidate will have 60 seconds for a closing statement, if you will. And Richard Keatley, you get the first closing statement.
Yes, I'm running for Commissioner of Labor to make Georgia a better place for workers. We're currently number 42 in economic opportunity. We have a lot of people that are underemployed. Unemployment is not the big problem. It's people stitching together jobs that aren't leading anywhere. Misclassification of workers. People are being paid like Uber drivers. Truck drivers are treated like Uber drivers. And so stealing the wages out of people's pockets, stealing the benefits out of their pockets, and they're unable to make ends meet. We need to make Georgia a better place for workers. I want to work with our educational institutions so that we can build pathways to the middle class and protect our workers from discrimination.
And Mark Butler, you get the final closing statement.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the people of Georgia for allowing me to be your labor commissioner, and I'm asking you for your vote. We still have a lot of work to do. Even though we have been setting records right now, we have the most jobs in the history of the state of Georgia. We have the most people employed in the history of the state of Georgia and the largest workforce that we've ever seen. We also have the fewest number of individuals unemployment since 1990. But like I said, we still have work to do. One of the things I want to see us do is continue to develop our workforce, so working through our educational programs. I want to expand Georgia Best, which has become a terrific program. It teaches the basic soft skills to our young people and also our people in prisons. It's one of those things that we have found out. If you have great soft skills, you can be successful no matter what your education is. And we're going to keep doing that because we want to help people achieve through education and through training. And if you'll re-elect me, we will keep doing the good work that we're doing right now in the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. And that concludes our debate for the day. We'd like to remind voters that Election Day is Tuesday, November 6th, and early voting begins October 15th. Not too far off. Our thanks to the candidates and to the panel of journalists who have helped us here today. I'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club and Georgia Public Broadcasting for arranging today's debate. For more information on the full schedule of general election debates, please visit atlantapressclub.org. Now, this debate will be archived there and also on Georgia Public Broadcasting's website, gpb.org. I'm Dale Russell. Thank you for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Good evening. And I said, oh my God.
I don't know if they would like when it goes to TV. I don't know if they would let us do it. Or I was like, oh.
But then everything got, yeah, it was always fine. But yeah, it was one of those things that I was like, they did not change it because I saw your email. Yes.
I saw your email that it wasn't still in the script, but I didn't see it. I thought, well, if it's in there, my brain will go mine. At least I called you mine.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Where was that? That is so funny.
At the very beginning.
Like, yeah.